నా హైడ్రేషన్ కోసం ఐ జస్ట్ ట్రస్ట్ వన్ థింగ్, ఫుల్గా వాటర్ ఉండే కంట్రీ డిలైట్ వల్ల
పొలాచి కోకోనట్స్.
సో ఇప్పుడే కంట్రీ డిలైట్ యాప్ డౌన్లోడ్ చేసుకొని ఆర్డర్ చేయండి.
Come to the much awaited part of the program. I'm going to introduce Professor K. Nageshwar Garu, and then he will speak a few words to all of us. It is indeed an honor for me to introduce Professor K. Nageshwar Garu. He is a former MLC and professor in the Department of Journalism, Osmania University, Hyderabad. Born on August 15, 1963, he was a boy who could not speak properly until the age of 4. He was a 12-year-old kid who wanted to jump into the well because he could not speak proper English. Later, he went on to become a professional journalist and then a legislator. Now he is a journalism teacher, a social activist, a motivational speaker, and very active on YouTube, posting videos on trending topics like the Waqf bill in the parliament and the adolescent series on Netflix. Professor Nageshwar Garu was just 8 years old when he started questioning the societal norms. His grandmother punished him for playing with a Dalit kid in his village. He questioned her, if everybody is equal in the eyes of God, why are they any different? As expected, his grandmother answered him with punishment. Nageshwar ji did not stop there. He went with rage and had dinner in the Dalit boy's house. Grandmother was obviously even more furious and punished more. That incident made him more determined. He said he will not change his behavior when he is not wrong. He said, I'll be fearless in stating facts and questioning superstitions. Speaking of his education, Professor Nageshwar Garu finished BSc in electronics. He then pursued journalism and cleared UPSC prelims examination. He felt when there is so much to study and explore, why should I confine myself to civils? He decided not to appear for the mains exam. Everybody thought he's making a mistake, but later he reached a stage in his life where he's been called to teach IAS officers. In 1977, while he and his elder brother were looking at the images in a cartoon in an English daily illustrated, Nageshwar Garu told his brother, we should write an article in this paper. His brother said, "Ore chadivite manaku idi ardhame kaadu, indulo raaytam entra urko." Nageshwar Garu replied, "Indulo vyasalu rasindi kuda manushule kada, vallu rayaga lenidi manam enduku rayalem." He published his first article in 1986. Professor Nageshwar Rao is a strong advocate of design thinking program by Stanford University. He says, we spend a lot of time thinking about the problems. So focus your energies and efforts on problem solving. The moment you start focusing on solutions, problems get resolved on their own. Professor Nageshwar Garu loves journalism and continues to impart his findings and knowledge through his YouTube channel. So without further delay, I invite Professor Nageshwar Garu to address the gathering today.
Respected directors of CCMB, IICT, NGRI, galaxy of scientists, members of staff of these three great institutions. I deem it an honor today to be present here because I spent 42 years of my life looking with great admiration these three institutions because I lived for more than 4 decades on university campus as a student, as a teacher. In fact, I was residing in the quarter just the other side of the road. So I always felt proud that these institutions, CCMB, IICT NGRI, brought laurels to our country and made Hyderabad the science capital of India. So it's certainly an honor to be here. Today, I thought I would come very fast to this place because today is a holiday. But contrary to my expectations, I was late. Why was I late? Then the reason for that was political VIPs were all on the roads to pay tributes to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Well, that struck me what Ambedkar has said. Ambedkar was firmly against hero worship. He never accepted hero worship. He said, the liberty should not be laid at the feet of a great man. This is what Ambedkar said. One freedom fighter once said, we are building stone monuments in honor of freedom fighters, but we are stoning to death the ideals they espouse. And మహనీయుల స్మారకార్థం రాతి విగ్రహాలు కడుతున్నాం, కానీ వారు బోధించిన విలువలను రాళ్లతో కొట్టి చంపుతున్నామన్నాడు. So on this occasion, I know that if I speak in Telugu, there will be more applause. That's the reason I said. I can understand, nothing wrong in it, because we will be more comfortable in Telugu, but certainly there is quite a good number of people who can't comprehend in Telugu, so compelling me to speak in English. So the idea which I am telling is the symbolic invocation of Ambedkar is not the real essence of the tribute we can pay to this great man. Then what is the real tribute to Ambedkar? So to engage with the ideas of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, not just engage with the ideas of Dr. Ambedkar, but internalize his ideas in our own life, in our own institution's life. That is something which is a real tribute to Ambedkar. This ceremonial invocation is essential. I am not denying its importance, but the greater importance lies in engaging with the ideas of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and trying to internalize these ideas into our own lives and the lives of the institutions in which we are working. So what did Dr. Ambedkar live for? We should look at the life, teachings, works, accomplishments. The very personality and the life of Ambedkar is a telling lesson that there is no limitation to human potential. Despite coming from one of the most impoverished economic background and unbelievable social oppression, nothing can be more brutal than untouchability. But having come from socially oppressed, economically marginalized sections, he has studied at some of the greatest institutions, which the most affluent people of not that day, even today, can hardly dream to be part of it. He studied in the Columbia University. He studied at the London School of Economics. I am sure each one of us would love our children to study in such great institutions. But it was remarkable and rather unbelievable for a person who has come from such a socio-economically depressed and deprived background to have studied in such echelons of great learning. So that itself shows the emancipatory potential of intellect, education. So therefore, Ambedkar's life and teachings embody a basic lesson. The basic lesson is education can alone transform society. Education has immense potential. Amartya Sen, in some of his works, said, inequalities are the root cause of poverty. One form of inequality will lead to another form of inequality. Educational inequality will lead to income inequality. So the real tribute to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is uncompromising struggle against all forms of inequalities and their ugly manifestations. So we have to rededicate to the cause of fight against inequalities and the life we have to dedicate for emancipation. Well, some of you may ask, sir, we are all working in scientific institutions. How are we really associated with these ideas? So quite often, people in science think that they live in islands of scientific excellence. And people in the social world think that science is something which is incomprehensible to them. But there should be an interface between science and society. Science doesn't operate in a social vacuum. I'll give you a small example. The World Bank, in its report called Knowledge-Based Global Societies, said there is a great amount of research done in cosmetics than research on diarrhea. Research on cosmetics, research on diarrhea, both are equally great scientific accomplishments. But research in cosmetics, what is the use of that? I'm not denying its use. Certainly not. Each one of us use cosmetics. But I'm sure research on diarrhea will save the helpless children, not in hundreds, but in thousands. So ultimately, the science also has a value associated with it. What does the science show? If you can create a cure for AIDS or a vaccine for AIDS, I am sure the vaccine for AIDS will be many times more superior in its accomplishment, though the scientific character of these two achievements are equally great. So therefore, as a students of science, the Ambedkar's life and teachings teach us that science should also have a value associated with it. Science doesn't operate in a social vacuum. Science doesn't operate science certainly operates in a social milieu. How should the science liberate the life of the people? The objective of the science is not just to wander in the theoretical world, but apply it to the common man's problems and find solutions to this. For example, today we are talking about frugal engineering. Frugal engineering refers to developing low-cost technologies. Well, frugal engineering can develop a low-cost car. Frugal engineering can also develop a low-cost laptop. Both are great scientific achievements. But if you are inspired by B.R. Ambedkar, you will not treat the both alike. Well, both are equally great scientific achievements, but a low-cost car will make the life miserable on the roads. It will result in greater consumption of fossil fuels. It will result in accentuating the problem of global warming. Whereas discovery or invention of a low-cost laptop can bring education to the millions and millions of deprived children. That is the greatness of a technology. Now tell me, if you are inspired by the Ambedkar's life, the way you look at society, if you are a filmmaker and inspired by the Ambedkar life, perhaps you will come out with the films like Jai Bhim or films like India's Great Kitchen. But if you are not inspired by Ambedkar's life, you will end up producing the great films like Pushpa or Pushpa 2. Both are films. I am not denying them. Both are great artistic works. I am not even denying. Perhaps the Pushpa may be the much greater artistic work than Jai Bhim. But the films like Jai Bhim and the films like India's Great Kitchen, whose Hindi version has recently come, but I was told that it is a toned-down version of the Malayali film. But certainly India's Great Kitchen talks about the enslaved life of a woman in an average Indian household who continues to contribute unpaid work, often ignored by the family members, not even acknowledged most of the time. And ultimately, that microaggressions in that homemaker turns her into a rebel. This is what Ambedkar taught us. So the progress of a society is measured by the progress of a woman of the society has achieved. Quite unfortunately, Ambedkar is treated as a leader of the marginalized sections, but as a leader of the socially oppressed communities. But let me tell you, if you read Ambedkar properly, you will certainly not accept this kind of an argument. It is true that he has liberated millions and millions of people. I am not denying that. He created a great social consciousness. I was traveling from Guntur one day in an air-conditioned bogie. And that was the day on which there was a massive Dalit rally in Hyderabad. Hundreds of people entered the train without tickets. They even entered into my air-conditioned bogie also. And let me tell you, when I was asked to wake up, one old man came and said, లే కూర్చో, నేను కూడా కూర్చోవాలి అన్నాడు. అదేందయ్యా, నేను రిజర్వ్ చేసుకున్నా, డబ్బులు కట్టి, ఇది ఎయిర్ కండిషన్ అంటే ఒక్కసారి ఇట్లా చూసా. నాకే ఈ రైలు నువ్వు కట్టావా, ఈ రైలు నువ్వు నిర్మించావా అన్నాడు. కాదు అన్న. ఈ రైలు పట్టాలు నువ్వు నిర్మించినవా, నీ తాత నిర్మించిందా అన్నాడు. కాదు అన్న. ఈ రైలు నీది కాదు, రైలు పెట్టాలు నీది కాదు, నువ్వు పండుకున్న బెర్త్ కాదు, అవన్నీ మేమయ్యా తయారు చేసినాయి, కష్టజీవులము. మేము ఎన్నడన్నా రిజర్వేషన్ అడిగినామా? ఒక్కరోజు మేము మాకు కావాలంటే నువ్వు నీ రిజర్వేషన్ అంటున్నావు అన్నాడు. ఐ వాజ్ సింప్లీ షాక్డ్. ఐ హ్యావ్ రెడ్ అంబేద్కర్ మెనీ ఎ టైమ్, బట్ ఐ ఫెయిల్ టు ఎక్నాలెడ్జ్ దట్ ద టీచింగ్స్ ఆఫ్ అంబేద్కర్ created such a wonderful consciousness in that old man. I simply stood up and said, నేను పండుకోవడం కాదు, నిలబడి ఉంటాను, నువ్వు కూర్చోండి అని చెప్పినాను. ఎందుకంటే I salute your consciousness. But how did that consciousness come to that old illiterate man from a remote village of our state? That consciousness was created because it was Ambedkar who has educated the masses, who has mobilized the masses, who has agitated millions of minds. So the life and works of Ambedkar are not just teachings for the marginalized sections. Certainly he is the champion of the marginalized. There is no second thought about it. The marginalized should have a reason to celebrate. Today they are living with a sense of human dignity, essentially because many other great leaders thought about it. Gandhiji thought that by reforming the minds of the people, we can bring about social equality. That was the Gandhian thought. We have nothing against it. Gandhi is a great man. But he believed that by preaching society, by creating a spiritual consciousness in the society to treat all human beings alike, the society will change. Son Jawaharlal Nehru thought by encouraging the industrialization, by encouraging big industries, by encouraging the scientific institutions like us, like these, we can bring about modernity. And modernity will automatically negate social oppression. But Gandhi and Nehru thought in this direction. It was Ambedkar who thought the real progress of a society can only be achieved by a constitutional legal guarantees to the marginalized sections. That was the contribution of Ambedkar. So the Gandhian concept of trusteeship, spiritual change, Nehru's concept of modernity, and Ambedkar's concept of constitutional action. So I am not comparing the three great leaders. It is absolutely foolish to compare three great leaders, but I can certainly vow that it is a constitutional action of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar that really proved to be a more and a better understanding of the things. So today, I'll recall your attention to one of the great statements of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dedicating the Constitution to Mother India, Ambedkar said, we are living in a society, an unequal society, where there is an elevation of some and degradation of many. We are living in a unequal society where there is an elevation for some and degradation for many. And we are living in an economic structure where some are highly affluent and where majority are condemned to poverty. But we are entering into a political democracy where there is one man, one vote, one value. But our society doesn't give one man, one value. So he differentiated between the political democracy, social democracy, and economic democracy and said, thus we are now entering a life of contradictions. How long this life of contradictions should remain? If we fail to resolve this life of contradictions, the victims of unequal society will rise in rebellion to dismantle and demolish the political democracy which this constituent assembly has assiduously built. This is what Ambedkar has said. I'll tell you in Telugu, you'll understand the full essence of it. ఈ రోజు మనం ఏ సమాజంలో నివసిస్తున్నామంటే ఈ సమాజంలో కొద్దిమంది మాత్రం ఎగువన ఉంటారు, మెజారిటీ మాత్రం దిగువన ఉంటారు. మనం ఏ ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థలో జీవిస్తున్నామంటే కొద్దిమంది మాత్రం అత్యంత సంపన్నులుగా ఉంటారు, అత్యధిక మంది పేదరికంలో మగ్గుతారు. కానీ ఈ అసమానతలతో కూడిన సామాజిక ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థలో రాజకీయ సమానత్వం ఈ రాజ్యాంగం ద్వారా ఇస్తున్నాం. ఒక మనిషి ఒక ఓటు ఒక విలువ. కానీ సాధించాల్సింది ఒక మనిషి ఒక విలువ. ఈ వైరుధ్యాల జీవితం ఎంతకాలం నడవాలి? ఇది ఇలాగే కొనసాగితే ఏదో ఒక రోజు అసమానతల బాధితులు మనం ఎంతో కష్టంతో నిర్మించుకున్న ఈ రాజ్యాంగ వ్యవస్థల్ని, రాజకీయ ప్రజాస్వామ్యాన్ని చిదిమివేస్తారు, చెరిపివేస్తారు అని అంటాడు. నౌ టెల్ మీ, ఆ హెచ్చరిక అంబేద్కర్ ఎంత, what kind of a profound understanding of the relationship between social democracy, economic democracy and political democracy. So today what we are, let me tell you, some of us may take these constitutional guarantees as something granted for us, but you may be surprised to know what is the average life of a constitution. ఒక రాజ్యాంగం యొక్క సగటు జీవిత కాలం ఎంత? There was a study of more than 150 nations. The average lifespan of a constitution is just 17 years. And today, we have a constitution with all its shortcomings and limitations. We have a wonderful living and kicking constitution for more than 75 years. It is because that itself is a great salutation to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And this constitution gives us freedom. This constitution gives us a life. He was in favor of nationalization of industry, nationalization of land. Many people talk only about his social radicalism. Many are oblivious to the economical radicalism which Ambedkar has exposed. Well, I am not telling that the nationalization of industry, nationalization of land may not perhaps be the ideal situation today. We are living in a free market economy. But certainly the spirit of that is equally relevant today. The spirit tells us that we cannot accept the humongous inequalities that exist in our country, where 22 crore Indians still live below the daily wage of 375 rupees, where 10 big families, wealthy families of India equal the wealth of the 10 big families of India is perhaps more than a significant chunk of the entire Indian country's population. So the question comes is, when we celebrate Ambedkar Jayanti, it should be a symbol of resistance. It should be a resistance against all forms of oppression. We should, in fact, why did I say we should internalize these ideals? Well, if we internalize these ideals in our family life, I am sure our Indian family will be a more democratic family. If we internalize Ambedkar's ideas in our institutions will perhaps be a more democratic institutions. So the ideas of equality, liberty and fraternity which the Constitution espouses. Look at what Ambedkar has said. This is a country with enormous diversity. This is a multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-religious society. That this society should only be secular. This is what Ambedkar strongly believed. For him, secularism is not, many people these days think that secularism is anti-religion. Secularism is certainly not against religion. Secularism doesn't advocate an irreligious society. Secularism only advocates irreligious state. The state has no religion. Society will continue to have the religion. See the finest balance between personal right, individual's fundamental right to faith. So the Constitution says every citizen of this country can profess, practice and propagate religion. At the same time it says the state has no religion. These two things seem to be contradictory to each other, but certainly not contradictory. I'll give you a small example to understand the very concept. If you are a Hindu judge, you live your life according to Sanatana Dharma. You follow Vedas. But when you go to the court, you will not give judgment based on Vedic scriptures. You are an avowed Muslim. You live according to Quran. But when you go to court, you will not give judgment based on Shariat law. You are a devoted Christian. Your life is certainly follows Bible. But your judgments are certainly not biblical. For a Hindu judge who follows Sanatana Dharma, for a Muslim judge who follows Quran, for Christian judge who follows Bible, the common text when he sits in the chair of a judge is the great Constitution of India. So that is what Ambedkar tells us. How should we differentiate our personal life? In personal life, you have liberty. In your personal life, you have liberty of faith. But as Supreme Court said, your personal life and belief in faith cannot be brought into the public life. So when it comes to the public life, it has to be truly secular. Can there be any better enlightened understanding of the religion, citizen and society, state? These are four institutions: state, citizen, religion and society. I am sure there cannot be more creative combination of a freedom to profess, practice and preach a religion on one side, but a question of what the religion should play in the public life. This is the contribution of the great leaders like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. So this, I can quote you a number of such constitutional aspects. The state of Telangana wouldn't have been reality if Ambedkar did not postulate his position on Article 3. When Article 3 of the Constitution was debated, some of you may be knowing, according to Indian Constitution, a state can be divided without even taking the consent of the assembly of that state concerned. Parliament by a simple majority can divide a state. This was challenged in the Constituent Assembly. When we are living in a federal system, how can we divide a state without the consent of the state assembly? It was B.R. Ambedkar who said, if we include this provision that the consent of the state assembly is required, no aspiration for a small state will be a reality, because the majority in that assembly will never allow this to happen. So therefore, India is an indestructible union of destructible states. This is what Ambedkar has said. So look at any aspect of the Constitution. Any aspect of the Constitution, if you have the time and patience to read the Constitution, it's not just a book of law. It is not just a book of law. It is a guiding philosophy for our own life. If you will be a better human being if you read Constitution. You will be a better administrator if you read the Constitution. You will be a better husband if you read the Constitution. You will be a better father if you read the Constitution. That is the beauty of the Constitution. The Constitution abhors all kinds of prejudices. You might have seen recently the 4-part Netflix series on adolescence. I'm sure if you have not seen, please see it. How a 13-year-old child, constant exposure to content in social media with full of misogyny has led to a brutal crime the child has committed. So what does it indicate? It indicates that a prejudice can lead to any kind of unbelievably criminal activity also. So the Ambedkar's teachings tell us that we should fight against all forms of prejudices and in all its manifestations. Therefore, my sincere appeal to all of you is, I'm also a student of science. As I was a graduate in electronics, postgraduate in journalism, doctorate in political science, and taught economics. At Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, I taught economics for 4 years. Well, please don't think that I have failed in science and moved to that. Not at all. I was a distinction in electronics. I was a state second in intermediate in physics. So nothing prevented me, but out of interest, I moved to social sciences. But that's the reason when I've been using the word as a student of science. It is a constitution that tells us scientific temper. These science institutions can learn from the teachings of Ambedkar that the scientific research is not value neutral. Scientific research should also contribute to the social emancipation, economic emancipation. When I always look at my kitchen in my house, I am always remembered of how much difficulty my mother has faced to produce a idli batter and a dosha batter. I still remember how my mother has to face a lot of things, a lot of problems in the kitchen. Today when I see a gas stove, when I see a pressure cooker, when I see a grinder, I feel how science has transformed the life of a mother in the kitchen. So therefore, the science and technology should emancipate the lives of the people. It should create a more egalitarian society. That's the lesson. Standing in front of a galaxy of scientific people, I can only urge you, these three great institutions which made unbelievable contribution to the progress of India. I am not telling because you invited me. I am telling because I truly believe and I have a great admiration for these three institutions. I am sure this is the time for us to rededicate science for the cause of common man. Thank you very much for a patient hearing.
Thank you so much for your time and accepting our invitation to be the chief guest here. I request you all please join me in giving a warm round of applause for Professor Nageshwar. I now request all the three directors to felicitate our chief guest today. Nageshwar, memento?
Sir,
Box, memento. Memento.